In this video, we're going to have a look at how to resolve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So when we've got an equation in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, we can use the quadratic formula. Now the quadratic formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and then that is divided by 2a. So let's have a look at the steps required to use the quadratic formula in solving a quadratic equation. So the first step is to identify the a, b, and c values from the equation in the question. Once you've identified those values, the second step is to write the formula, substitute those values into the formula, and then solve and find the values for x. You'll normally find two values for x at the end of the steps. So let's have a look at a couple of examples of how do we solve quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So in my first example, I want to solve the equation 4x squared minus 9x minus 3 is equal to 0. So my first step is going to be identify my a, b, and c values. So my a value is in front of the x squared. My b value is in front of the x, and my c value is the value on the end. And when I'm looking at these values, it's important to remember that you need to look at the sign in front as well. So my a value is going to be equal to 4. My b value is equal to negative 9, and my c value is equal to negative 3. So now that I have those values, my next step is to write the formula. So after I've written down the formula, I can now substitute in my values. So negative b is going to be negative, and then my b value of negative 9, plus or minus the square root of negative 9 squared minus 4 times my a value of 4 times negative 3. And I find it best to put my negatives into brackets to remind me that they are negative numbers. And then that is over 2 times a. So now I need to start calculating these values. So negative 9, two negatives becomes a positive, plus or minus the square root of 129 divided by 2 times 4, which is 8. Now once I get down to this point, I split my equation and it becomes x is equal to 9 plus the square root of 129 over 8, or x is equal to 9 minus the square root of 129 over 8. And then to solve, I'll put each of those calculations into my calculator. So 9 plus the square root of 129 divided by 8 is equal to 2.54. And then 9 take the square root of 129 divided by 8 is equal to negative 0.29. So to solve the equation 4x squared minus 9x minus 3 is equal to 0, x is going to equal to 2.54, or x is going to equal to negative 0.29. So let's have a look at a second example. In this example, I want to solve the equation negative 6x squared plus 4x plus 5. And to do that, I follow my steps. So the first step is to determine what the a, b, and c value is going to be. So my a value is going to be in front of x squared. My b value is going to be in front of x, and my c value is the number on its own. So a is going to equal negative 6, b is going to equal 4, and c is going to equal 5. So now that I have determined my values for a, b, and c, my next step is going to be to write the formula. After you write the formula, you want to substitute in your values for a, b, and c into that formula. So x is going to equal negative b, so negative 4 plus or minus the square root of b squared. So 4 squared minus 4 times a, so 4 times negative 6 times by 5, and that is over 2 times a, or 2 times negative 6. So that's going to equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 136 divided by negative 12. So at this point I split my formula and it becomes x is equal to negative 4 plus the square root of 136 divided by negative 12, or x is equal to negative 4 minus the square root of 136 over negative 12. So putting those values into my calculator, negative 4 plus the square root of 136 divided by negative 12 is equal to negative 0.64, or x is equal to negative 4 minus the square root of 136 divided by negative 12, so x is equal to 1.31. So my values for x, when the equation is negative 6x squared plus 4x plus 5 is equal to 0, is x is equal to negative 0.64 or x is equal to 1.3. So there are a couple of examples of how we use the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation.